Hey, welcome back to another episode of AZ Update. I'm your host, Anthony Bartolo, joined as always by Thomas Meyer. Thomas, how's it going this Friday?
Fantastic, as always. Had a great week, doing well. I hope you did very well, too. I heard you had some holiday in Canada, right?
Yep, Canada Day on July the 1st, celebrating Canada's birthday. And then we're pre-July the 4th, so our American friends are going to have their big party tomorrow. Most of them are off today, so it's going to be pretty much a European and Canadian audience today, I believe.
I guess so. I'm always happy. We have a couple of awesome people in the stream. I think we have Andrew is always joining us, Paul, Richard. I didn't see Gregor this time, but a lot of people are joining, familiar faces in the chat, so that's great. But obviously, I hope there's even more people joining, right? And this week, we also had a couple of interesting things happening again, like not just Azure news, but a lot of related things. And I think we want to give first a big shout out to our renewed Microsoft MVPs. I know this is always a big thing. There is, I think, every month you can become a new MVP. But I think on July 1st, that's the date when you actually know that you're renewed for the next year. So again, congratulations, everyone.
And Thomas, you were an MVP too, right, at one point? Thomas?
I can't hear you, Anthony. And I'm not sure if that's my fault.
All good. So once upon a time, I was actually a MVP for Windows Mobile and Windows Phone. And I was actually there until it was till the end. And then, unfortunately, obviously, we've moved on from that product. But to be here at Microsoft, it's awesome. The fact that we're able to provide that voice as an MVP in terms of what we can do with the community to enhance the capabilities made available in respect to the products and services that Microsoft provides. Thomas, there was another piece of news that you wanted to talk about as well. I think something around Windows 10 changes that's occurred.
Yes, absolutely. So you're probably familiar with like the Windows Insider program, and I think we have many Insider programs at Microsoft, right? And you're also familiar that like we obviously get new builds all the time. But this week was really a good week if you are one of the insiders in the like formerly known as the fast ring. I think it's now called the dev channel. So the fast ring became, I think, the dev channel. Then slow ring became the beta channel, and then we had release preview which became the release preview channel. So if you really want to go out like all in on the latest and greatest features and want to try these out, the dev channel is the place for you. And I'm quickly going to share something because again, I'm very excited about this update. I know maybe not everyone is as much as I am, but so let me quickly share my screen here because we got a little bit of new designs here. So we can see this is the update announcement blog, but they worked hard this time, not just in bringing like performance improvements and things like that, but also adding a little bit of new design changes. So here is a good animation where you can see what happens. Instead, like they reworked the start menu. And so you can see here very fine, like the icons, for example, in the start menu changed from having that little tiny box. They also made it, I feel like way nicer now with these tiles. They look much more clean and much more cleaned up. And then there are a couple of changes. Again, this also obviously works in dark mode as well. Or if you choose a accent, like a color for yourself, you can also have it more the color you like in that case. And then also some other small changes. So I think something was on improved tablet mode. When you have like a Surface device or another tablet device from another vendor, you can basically go out and like now what's happened if you take off the keyboard, for example. In the beginning, it was just asking you want to switch to tablet mode. Now, per default, it switches you automatically to tablet mode. And then this one is actually very good for productivity. So I know, like many of you hopefully know the Alt-Tab shortcut. So you can basically switch between apps and windows. Now, the The thing was when you had for example, a browser open and you had a window with multiple tabs, you just could see the first window or the tab which was open on that specific browser. Now, with the latest update and Microsoft Edge, you can basically go out and do alt tab for all the tabs as well. So you have multiple tabs open, you get that rich view of all the tabs, and you can switch between them. So yeah, that is what I want to share, because I feel like these are great updates, because I'm, as many of you as well, we're using Windows daily, right? And so I feel that that's a great addition to improve that and make it easier for people to be more productive.
Now, what's interesting is, it was very timely. Richard Hooper just mentioned that he misses Windows Mobile, but he's looking forward towards the release of the Surface Duo. How much of this, Thomas, in terms of the changes that are being made, do you feel is because of the fact that we're going to have these new form factors coming out that'll be using Windows 10 and require this new change in interface?
So it's difficult to say how much. I mean, this is like really the desktop focus build, like the classic Windows we have, but also like optimized obviously for tablet mode. But it's not the same Windows as you would get with the dual screen devices. However, you're absolutely right. I mean, the teams definitely, if you've seen the videos about it, the teams are definitely thinking bring the experience closer together. So you, like, if you are familiar with that version of Windows, you're also familiar with other devices like the Surface Duo or the Surface Neo, which I think it was announced that it was like, or I've seen that it comes later on, or it was a little bit later as they announced. But there's some really great things happening, and I can't wait to get the Surface Duo in my hands and get take advantage of that experience. I hope you get one too.
Fingers crossed. So let's continue on with the news, and I think, Thomas, you're up first with a bit of news on Azure Firewall.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm sharing my screen. Let me quickly switch here to the Azure Firewall tab. So Azure Firewall Manager, which is a new tool, I'm going to speak about that, is now generally available, right? And so you're probably familiar with Azure Firewall, which is kind of like a software-defined solution, a scalable cloud solution firewall you can use to secure your environments running on Azure, right? So you'll be able to, I mean, in the past, you were probably building your appliances, and you can still do that, but they were always focused on, like, they were like actual VMs, right? So you deployed these, and it was not like when you needed to scale, you need to have certain techniques to do that. Now, Azure Firewall obviously is kind of a real cloud native solution in our software-defined networking stack. And a lot of customers took advantage of this. But if you're kind of like in a more complex networking setup, you had kind of like multiples of these firewalls instances deployed, and the management kind of like was difficult. And I remember I've seen some great work by a couple of our MVPs who actually used or built like ARM templates and Azure DevOps to do changes to Azure Firewall. So they had a very good process to do these changes to manage Azure firewalls. And this is great, they can still use that. But in addition, you also get now Azure Firewall Manager, which basically helps you to manage, like if you have multiple Azure firewalls, you can manage that. You also have third-party integration, as we can see here. So you get some more partners, which you like, famous like Checkpoint or Zscaler and others, which are integrating into that. And you could also get, for example, Azure Firewall Policy, which allows you to set and configure these firewall policies. So that is some great improvements there, especially again, when you have these more complex network setups, but also if you have easy setups, right, you can still take advantage of this. And again, there are a ton, as you can see here, there we have a ton of other improvements as well. So definitely if you have Azure Firewall in your setup, or you're looking for a solution to like get security and firewall solutions into your Azure setup, then definitely have a look at Azure Firewall and Azure Firewall Manager.
So this is huge news, right? A couple things that picking out from your report, the inclusion of the MVPs and their recommendation of process, creation of ARM templates for ease of setup, and the fact that they are using this technology in real world is so beneficial to Microsoft to see how the adoption of services that are being released are being taken advantage of. And then from that perspective, you have also the ability in terms of manager to manage multiple Azure Firewall implementations at once, as opposed to prior to, you'd have to go to instance and make changes accordingly. Having it unified is not only just a single pane of glass aspect, it's also the ability to, push out a regulatory, image to the firewalls that are deployed that makes it standard. So it's not, there's no guesswork in terms of what you're deploying.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like, again, this is like how the platform matures, right? It's also not, I always like the networking part in terms of like how you can see how the cloud improves really, really well. Because the networking part is something where we started, it was very close or very familiar. It's still very familiar to like how you do networking in a sense like on-prem. But again, there's a huge difference to it as well, because you have all these cloud native technologies and it works in a different way, right? To set up the networking part, you can do that very, very simple and easy going, and it's very fast. But obviously, you need to get your architecture right. You need to get your management of these things right. Otherwise, you will run into issues later. But the great thing really about it is you can see how it still improves and gets better and better and better, especially with customer feedback, right? I think that is one of the important points here as well, to see, hey, this is not just something the team developed because they thought it's a good idea. This is something they developed because customers were asking with that. And so that, I think, it's a great example.
And that's why, providing your feedback is so important to us, because it allows us to provide guidance in terms of creation of services or upkeep of existing services to new functionality. Let's continue on with the news. So next up is we're talking about the Azure Migrate implementation again as a solution. The team has been very busy in terms of the service itself, again, based on, your feedback in terms of where the evolution of the service should go. We talked about it last week on last week's show, and this week they've now announced the ability to do assessment of your VMware on-premises implementation for migration to cloud. So they've now included this into the documentation in respect to, if you have an on-premises implementation of VMware, the Microsoft Migrate tool will now go forward and do a full-on assessment of your implementation of how it can then migrate into the VMware solution made available as a first party on Azure. This is huge because of the fact that there's so many intricacies in terms of your setup for your VMware implementation, for it to take away all the guesswork in respect to your setup and your architecture, keeping your security protocols intact, the whole ability to just lift and shift your solution and not do it automatically. Obviously, do it in such a way that as per steps that appease your organization the way that you would migrate, but providing that recommendation in some cases in terms of the best practices to do so. Again, taking out a lot of the guesswork for your migration over to Azure. What do you think, Thomas?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I saw this, I was like super happy. I was also very surprised because the new VMware or Azure VMware Solutions is a pretty new service. We had that before. Again, we talked about that in a show as a kind of like a partner solution, right, where we work together with another partner. But this is pretty new, and already having that integration into the Azure Migrate assessment tool, I think, is a huge benefit. And I was like surprised that they were so fast, because usually it takes a while. Right. But that definitely helps customers who are looking for migration solutions to find out, okay, what is basically the best way to migrate, right? There is obviously, if you made the choice and said, okay, I want to migrate to Azure VMware Solutions, then you just use the migration tool, the assessment, to figure out, okay, what would it cost, what would be possible, and so on. And you get like, okay, this VM I can migrate, this I can't, and so on. All the benefits from Azure Migrate. But what I was thinking is like also like if someone wants to migrate and he doesn't really is not like sure, should I use Azure VMware Solutions or should I use native Azure virtual machines, if you will, then Azure Migrate Assessment, you can also try out both of them and compare them and see, hey, okay, this is what happens if you migrate to Azure or if you and which solution should I choose, right? And you can obviously also mix it up, right? You don't have to migrate everything to one solution. I can actually check like, okay, this goes here, this goes to Azure VMware Solutions, this goes to Azure Virtual Machines, and some of the application you even probably don't even migrate. You probably like some of them you leave them on-prem, or some of them you actually move to PaaS and SaaS services as well, and also. If you migrate the stuff to Azure VMs or Azure VMware Solutions, after that, to get like the full benefits of the cloud, it still makes sense to then go out and modernize these solutions. That's a very important step, right? I think a lot of customers are just like, okay, I lift and shift it to Azure and it, like leave it as it is. That is, you can do that, but the real benefit is then when you then start modernizing it. And I think that is what a lot of people also do, what we can see. We want to give them obviously a fast possibility to say, hey, when our data center leases, for example, are running out, we want to actually go and we need to give them a solution that so they can really, really quickly migrate that. Because as you know from your own experience, when management makes a decision to, for example, close a data center, until the migration project and stuff starts, it takes a while. So you're definitely happy if you can very quickly migrate. And again, Azure Migrate is a great solution for that, as well as now with Azure VMware Solutions, you get also an option for to extend your VMware environment. And I think last week we had Pumala talking about this on the show as well.
And it's been interesting. She's been commenting in terms of how appreciative of the VMware community is of Microsoft's support in implementing these solutions as first party, right, for the migration over. So it's been a great news story. The fact that it's now available on the Azure Migrate Solutions tool set is a huge advantage for everybody to take advantage of. So next up, Thomas, you're up next.
Okay, the next one I want to quickly show is also very important. And I think we talked now about costs as well, right? So this one is, again, this week we had the update for June when it comes to Azure Cost Management and Billing. And again, they do these monthly updates, blog posts where they say, hey, what is new this month? What did we improve? And so I felt this week it was a good time to actually have that on our show because there are some really good things going on. So first of all, the thing I want to highlight, obviously, is the flexibility of like budget notifications, right? So as not many people know, you can create budgets like for your different departments, for example, or different teams within Azure. Now, then you can set a budget and you get notifications, okay, when they are going to reach that budget, or like when they reach 20% or 50 or 80% or whatever, you can configure that. Now, the problem a little bit with that was that there was not much flexibility, right? So if, for example, you had these cloud scaling apps where you was like, okay, hey, on Christmas time, our shops need much more capacity. So in December, we need much more resources than we need in the other months, for example, or during holidays, right? Like coming up in the US or like we had in Canada, people are shopping more online. So what you want to do is for these months, you will probably want to set another budget. So now you can configure different budgets on different times and different months, for example. So you like don't get all the notifications during December because everyone is spinning up their resources, right? So I think that is good to have. It's again, it's if you don't use that much, and if you have like a very flat spending, like all the time the same, then this is probably not a huge deal. But again, for a lot of customers who had these scalable use cases, they're very happy that they can now implement that. A small thing, but has a big impact.
Oh, it's a huge impact, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
It's a big impact because of the fact that you can govern over your spending for cloud services.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's otherwise what do you do with the notifications if they're not accurate, right? If you know, okay, look, I get a notification that I use 80%, but yeah, I'm going to ignore it because everyone knows in the company that then there is no need for these notifications. So basically doing that is definitely a big help. There is also a couple of other things I really, really quickly want to mention because it's not that much, but it's It's all about like cost recommendations. So we also have obviously Azure Advisor. It gives a little bit more better and new scenarios to advise you to where you can save costs. And then what also is very important, I think that is also something interesting, is when it comes to transferring the ownership of a subscription. Right? Sometimes you need to switch actually like your tenant, or you need to give it to another owner. And now you can actually move subscriptions more easy between different tenants as well, and organizations, or even within your organization as well. So you have now a new scenario here with new subscriptions. Before it was, I think, with pay-as-you-go subscription, it was easy possible. Now you have new subscription models which can also leverage that, and so you can move these around if you need to. I think you can also see, the only thing I want to highlight before we move on to the next one, there are also some new ways you can actually save some money on Azure here in that list. So if you want to check this out, go out to our blog post. You will find the link, and you will see more information about these different topics, where we offer, for example, new sizes and new options, for example, Cosmos DB, auto scaling, and so on. So there are many, many options. We really want to help you to save money, right?
Excellent. That's excellent. So let's continue on with the news. So next up, we have the July IoT initiative team at Microsoft. So the Microsoft IoT team is putting forward a full-on month of information, sharing of labs, the ability to follow along on Microsoft Learn modules in terms of the upskilling on utilization of IoT. Now, we've talked about IoT on the show, numerous times, and the capabilities and security things to keep in mind. The whole practice of a proper implementation of IoT. Why is this important? Yes, for the developer side, developing on top of the platform is important in terms of understanding the security aspects and the architecture and the resources that are made available. But equally important to the IT professionals that are watching the show in respect to security, architecture. These are endpoints. These are devices that are sitting out there in the public, in the wild, capturing information on your behalf. Who has access to that information? How is that information secured? How is that information piped back to your central office? When it's in your central office, or when it's into your Azure services, how is it being digested in the cloud? Who's gaining access to that? Where is it being stored? This is a lot of the items that will be covered in the July OT initiative. I always add in that I. The July OT initiative in terms of the month-long resource creation. So it's not just bringing awareness to existing documents. It's also based on customer feedback. What documentation is currently missing that needs to be implemented in terms of IoT for adoption? So your feedback here is very important in respect to this partnership. If you want to participate, and if you have a lab or a demo that you would want to share, Microsoft is listening. Make sure you go onto Twitter and you go to hashtag JulyOT. To participate on Twitter, or you can definitely go to the blog, and they actually have a URL that goes directly to the blog. JulyOT.com will get you directly to the blog, and in the comments section, share your GitHub repo, share your architectural diagram in terms of your implementation. Microsoft wants to see your real-world implementation of IoT from an IT professional perspective, from a developer perspective. How are you and your organization adopting IoT? And it doesn't have to be all Microsoft. We want to see many clouds being utilized. We want to see, how, organizations are adopting their solutions and the reasoning behind the solutions and the way that they're being adopted. Would love to hear your feedback, and that's the real reason why we have this. It's an open conversation with the general public in terms of the adoption of IoT.
No, I love when teams do that, right? These efforts, these community efforts to basically go out and share that knowledge, as well as creating that content and working and training people and skilling people up. I think that is great. And you learn directly from the teams, right? So right. That is a great thing, but it's also very important to bring your own feedback in it. So it's really how this works together. And again, I can't really stress that enough. Like when I started working in IT, I remember setting up Windows Server and doing all that stuff with Active Directory and so on. And I was always thinking, Microsoft doesn't really care about my problems, right? They don't care what what I'm doing. But actually, we really do care, because if you have that problem, probably others have that problem too. And if we can obviously make our products better, that really helps.
Let's continue on. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in terms of events. We don't really have any events to share, but we do have a couple things in terms of initiatives that we wanted to share. First being the OneOps question. So our good friend, producer Pierre, is put on a OneOps question initiative that's happening on IT Ops Talk as we speak. What's awesome is, while yes, you're not going to do full coverage or due diligence of coverage of content in a minute, it's a great conversational piece in terms of the starting point. Where do I start in terms of the adoption of simplifying my management? Where do I start in terms of the adoption of Azure Stack? I know that Thomas, you're on a couple episodes as well. What has been your experience in terms of the OneOps Minute or OneOps Question Initiative?
I think it's a great conversation starter, and it gives you a great tip to solve some challenges. And it's a great starter for awareness, right? You get out and, hey, I haven't really heard about this, and hey, that's great, that answer. And I want to know more about this. And then people go out, and we obviously put links and more information to it in our blogs, but also in the video itself. So people can then go out and check out what is going on. Also very important, I feel, is that it raises questions and it starts conversations as well. So we realize, okay, what is going on? What does that mean? And so on. So I feel like that we have very good conversations as well with people watching these videos or this OneOps minutes. And obviously it was fun doing those. So yeah, really happy about that. And I know that you also want to share something more about a great new blog which came out this week.
The new blog that just came out this week as well is the new Microsoft Learn blog. So we're going to do this right before our Learn module of the week. So this is an awesome resource that talks about learning in terms of Microsoft services and technology, and the new availability in terms of what to know in regards to, if I'm going out for this exam, what are the resources that are made available to me through Microsoft Learn. The announcements of new exams are also going to be coming out on this page. So, when there's a new beta exam that's being released, as you can see, there's the AZ303 and the AZ304. They also made an announcement of the AZ104 for system administrators, all going to be made available on this, as well as the resources once you're certified, resources to help you find a job or elevate your career. There's resources in terms of networks that are out there that you can communicate with and collaborate with. This is a great new resource. So not just about here's the what you need to do and how you need to learn, building around that community in regards to having a conversation on how people can grow together.
Yeah. No, I really love that they now have that blog on this platform again. It really helps, obviously, to collaborate and listen and share their information. I'm also very much excited about the new AC 303 and 304 exams, which will be replacing 301 and 302 in a couple of months, I think. Which then give you the Azure Solution Architect certification. Again, these are now in beta, so you can go out and take them. You won't get the result immediately. It will take a little bit of time. So usually that's a couple of days, let's say 10 to 14 days, maybe even a little bit longer after the exam is really general available and comes out of beta. So for all, I get this question a lot. When do I get my results? As soon as it comes out of beta, it takes usually 10 to 14 days. We saw that, for example, with the 104 exam, which came out last week. People got their results from the beta exam already. I also want to point out, again, the advantages. I got asked a lot, what is the advantage of taking the beta exam, and do I even get the certification? Yes, so if you take the beta exam, absolutely you get the certification, as you would do with the full exam, but it really helps you to get bring early feedback, right, and make the exams and questions better. So you, at the end of the exam, you always have time to give your feedback to all of the questions in the exam. And obviously Microsoft and our teams are looking at this and then going out and changing if we feel okay, that's a fair feedback, going to change the questions or the answers or remove the that question. So definitely check that out. And if you want to become an Azure architect, I think that are the exams you have to look at in the next couple of months.
Well, speaking of the AZ-104 exam, so the module of the week that we're going to be showcasing on for Microsoft Learn is the AZ-104 prerequisites for Azure Administrator. Was just newly announced as a new module. This is a resource that provides you hands-on training for what you need to know in order to go forth and tackle the AZ-104 exam. This is, one of the many resources that are available, but this is a brand new resource that was launched and great, in tie-in with regards to you just completing the beta exam, this being made available for the masses to start their journey in terms of prep for the AZ-104 exam to complete. And that is the end of our show. We are, right on time. Again, every week has been busy. Thank you to all that are in the comments and in the chat window. We have Paul, we have Andrew, we have Rabbit all the way from South Africa. So we have, the audience is growing, which is awesome. Definitely, give us your commentary in terms of what you'd like to see next on the show next week, because we do want to build this out on what, you feel should be covered or what news excites you. Thomas, if you want to be followed on social, how does that happen?
Just go to Twitter and go to @ThomasMaurer.
And if you want to follow our good friend, producer Pierre, you can follow him at Wired Canuck. And if you want to follow me for some reason, you can follow me at Wireless Life. Everyone, it's been a great show. Enjoy your great weekend. Happy post-Canada Day. Happy pre-4th of July. And we'll see you all next week.